Hello and welcome to another episode of Bare Bones Wargaming, a show with no bells, no whistles, no frills, just a man, a camera, and his game. On this episode, it is time once again for the BBW OT opinion time. Womp womp womp. Womp womp womp. Wah, 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 wah. Hoo, ha, hee, ha. Yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, talking about, as I mentioned last episode, going to wrap up this series here with Kiev 41. And some of the commentary I'm going to make here is also applicable to the two sister games, the other two that make up the trilogy, if you will, the Barbarossa trilogy. Moscow 41 and Leningrad 41. So, let's start with the good. First of all, the good. Right here is some of the good. Okay? These are the reinforcement cups. Alright? I like the variable reinforcements because you never know what you're going to get. You never know what the situation is going to be like. That makes each game a little bit different. Even when you're playing by yourself, it can make things very interesting and challenging. You know, if you don't get critical headquarters or you don't get units that go with the headquarters, that can be important. You know, you destroy a Soviet headquarter like I did in the last combat example, and it goes into the cup and you don't pull it out, and you know, or if you weaken all your stuff down to the point where you're like, shoot, I only have a logistics value of 5, and I only get to draw 5 blocks. If one of those 5's on a Luftwaffe headquarters, you know, that kind of thing. So that's good. Also, once you learn the system, this is really easy to play, okay? And it's very easy to set up, too. That's another thing I like. The directions for setting things up in the booklet are very clear. The cards that are used here as well, you know, are nicely organized, okay? Reflects in images, the words, like here, you're going to randomly draw one of the First Pensa Army's units to put here for reinforcements. So it's very easy. I honestly can't say I think I've ever taken more than 10 minutes or so to set up a game of this. Okay, so again, like I said last video, you know, if you get a situation where the game's not going well, you just reboot it. No big deal. You know, you literally can take your arm and wipe it across the board and start over. No problem at all. I also think that the game also gives a good feel for Operation Barbarossa. You know, the spaces, because I mean, just if you look at this here, just look at the vastness that there is. There's a lot of spaces to cross here as the Wehrmacht, and of course a lot of spaces to defend and hold onto. Oh, excuse me. As the Soviets fighting for the motherland as well. So that plus, you know, you're trying to race your panzers ahead and your foot sloggers are miles behind and you're like, dude, what's going on? And then the whole logistic issue too. You know, I think that's also well represented here in the game. So all that again has a real good feel for this. The frustrations, the issues. You know, some people think the Luftwaffe is overpowered, but I disagree. Close air support was critical to the success of Barbarossa and how far the Germans got. You know, that ability to do it, even though, of course, as Craig Luther points out, and this just still boggles my mind that the numbers of men and especially tanks and airplanes, maybe not so much men, but definitely tanks and airplanes and artillery pieces were just slightly higher than what they attacked France with. That's just crazy. But, you know, the Luftwaffe's ability and their combined arms and stuff really compensated for all that and, you know, made all the difference in the world. Speaking of logistics, I like the logistics system because, you know, logistics systems, you get 3 tiers basically. You get to regenerate your headquarters, you get points for that. You get points for replacements, and you also get those points for new reinforcements. So I think that's very well done as well. Because again, you have to kind of weigh things out. Do I exhaust headquarters? If I exhaust a bunch of them in August, then, you know, am I even just going to have a logistical pause? Am I going to regenerate my leader and, you know, get a huge logistical value for September and go for it before the rain starts to come and stuff? Which, by the way, that's another thing I like about the logistics is when the weather changes potentially come starting in October. The rain and the snow affect the logistical value, so I think that's very cool too. Another thing I like is the number of scenarios. Most of the games come with 4 scenarios. This one here, Kiev 41, comes with Southern Struggle, the river, the snow, and the pocket. And Moscow 41 comes with, a typhoon scenario and stuff. So, you can play the entire campaign game, which is what I set up here and showed you guys. But you can also play a smaller amount if you want to. If you want to start from a different point, or you want to see, for example, with Kiev 41 here, if you want to go ahead and see, hey, could the Germans have, done a better job of, hanging on to Rostov? Well, you've got the snow scenario here, and you can explore that and see what you find. So that's very cool. I like that too. All right, and also this game's pretty good solo-wise because of the variable reinforcements. Also because you can do fun little things like I showed you. I turned some of the blocks backwards. You can do that with whichever side here, because the Germans also randomly have units deployed at the beginning of the game. So you can turn it around so you don't know what's there. Okay, and it works because, if it's a Soviet unit, it's either a remnant and you put it on its one step with its R, or it goes full strength. And the German ones are always full strength. So that, that little bit of unknown, it's interesting. That little bit of unknown at the beginning there really does make a big difference and has a big impact on the game. So, and other things you can do too that I've played around with, not with Kiev, but the sister games, is I've done things like, for example, sometimes I've rolled a die to simulate, command and control issues, and roll 6-sided die and have the number rounding up or down, and that's the number of headquarters you can activate on that impulse. So, again, that can kind of, hamper things because, even during World War II, it was still hard to coordinate, large formations and get everybody rolling on the same page. People think about, like, the Civil War and how difficult it was, or even how, well, I guess Antietam's a bad example because McClellan was just goofing around there, but so to speak. But, even trying to coordinate assaults and stuff, that was extremely difficult to do. And actually, it's reflected well in the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series. But here, even at this point, it was extremely difficult to pull that off. So, so you can do that, if you want. Or you don't have to. That's the great thing about it. You can play this, like straight up. You can play this with some tweaks where, yeah, okay, maybe your opponent is weaker. But, as a former chess player, hey, if somebody leaves their bishop hanging, I mean, I'm not going to after the game be like, oh gosh, that wasn't much fun because, he left his bishop hanging, so, that really wasn't fair and balanced. Who cares? Who cares? You won. That's just the deal. The other thing I will say is another solo tip for these games is that a fun thing to do is play one side's impulse, like the German, and then walk away for 5 or 10 minutes and come back into the Soviet, because it's amazing what you might see or what you might forget in the interim. So, thought there. Alright, so lots of good here, as you can see. About 6-7 things good. The bad. Well, the variable reinforcements, quite frankly, are a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, they can have you cheering and being like, oh yeah, baby, time to roll, time to be a juggernaut. Or they can have you pulling your hair out because you're like, dude, I didn't pull any Luftwaffe headquarters still, and it's September. You may have to use the initiative, which of course, if you use the initiative, then you give it to the Soviets, and then they can draw out more reinforcements. So it is a double-edged sword, because it can be frustrating, like that famous picture that different people post on Wargaming Geek with, the actor's name, I see it, Patrick Stewart, from Star Trek The Next Generation. Why do I need a fire card to fire? Well, it's like, dude, why do I have to draw the Luftwaffe headquarters? Well, logistics, bringing units up, trying to catch up to what's going on, blah, 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 committed elsewhere, etc., etc. So, the other thing is that it can be a bad thing, is using the to-hit system. Now, I will say that I do think it's kind of, I guess should be another good thing, but I do think it's kind of cool to use the different types. The elite ones, 4, 5, or 6, and then you have your stronger ones, your double fire and your single fire. And of course, as you reduce units, they go down from triple to double to single. But at the same time, it can be very swingy. You can get a situation where even if you have a bunch of panzers and you attack, and you roll a bunch of poor die rolls. You only get a hit or two, and it's like, shoot, I thought I was going to wipe all these infantry, and blast this open, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of Soviet infantry going being like, no, niet, did not break through, is not a problem. We are going to strike the bear. You hit the bear, but you only annoyed the bear. You no hurt the bear. So, next thing you know, you can end up losing your precious panzers. And a couple of games ago, I missed something. I came back and I was like, oh shoot, I left 17th Army hanging out to dry, and I coordinated a nice Soviet counterattack, and I destroyed all the blocks of 17th Army except the headquarters. And remember, the Germans don't get their blocks back. So, yeah, that was UGL. I didn't have an alibi. That was ugly. So yeah, to hit die roll system in general, in my opinion, it makes things very swingy at times. So that's something to think about from the bat. Okay. As far as the ugly goes, the big ugly here is one that is debatable. It depends on your perspective and your point of view. The ugly thing here is the creating the pockets. Now, I mentioned this, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here on this part of the map where I have these Soviet units still, because you can see from the last video I haven't, gone with the next Soviet impulse. But notice here, around these Soviet units, I've got a few units that are holding spaces, but, empty space, empty space, empty space, empty space. So once you're cut off, even if the space is not occupied by an enemy unit, you still can't, remember that list from last time, you can't fight, you can't move, you can't do anything. So it's not like these guys can even run for it, and head out. They can't. It's not possible for them to try to fight their way out of a pocket, which seems a little wonky because, of course, that was one of the things the Germans had a hard time doing, was trying to hold on to those pockets and basically brace it. Now, of course, you can go too far the other extreme, like, for example, the game Panzer's East, which is a solitaire game in World at War magazine. I forget what issue. But that one there, it just seems the Soviets are too overpowered. Because every time I played that, I got my panzers wiped out every time. And it's just like, wait a minute. That's not what happened historically. That can't be right. That can't be, yeah, there's something wrong there. So I haven't gone back to revisit that, to tweak with it, because I just haven't. So, so some people are like, dude, the space is empty. You make a run for it. Nobody's going to sit around being like, hey, man, this space is occupied, but it's empty. Well, hey, y'all, let's run for it. No, wait. It's an enemy-occupied space, so we need to sit here. No, nobody's going to do that, okay? So that might be the ugliest thing about this. I am of two minds on this. The empty spaces, like these two here, you could argue that there are, detachments from the larger units, because most of the units in this game are core, and they're basically forming the walls of the pocket. Now, I have been playing around with a variant, and I posted it on all three of the games as a thread, because some people like some of these games more than others. So Moscow 41 might get more traffic than Kiev 41. But basically, what I proposed is, when you move a unit through a space, to create one of the control markers, which are these little blocks. They're black ones for the Germans and red ones for the Soviets. So like this here, okay? In order to deploy that, you would turn, the unit, kind of like creating a defensive line. You would reduce it by one step. It would cost one movement point to do that. So in other words, you could reduce and still keep moving along. Because again, you're moving still, but it's like, hey, you're dropping off. Like you're going out for a date and you drop your kids off. It's your brother-in-law's or something. That kind of thing. So I'm toying around with what to do with these. I've thought about making them a strength of 2, just generically, and either single or double fire. 2 because basically, these guys would be stretched out. So whatever amount of men you leave, let's just say for argument's sake, you leave, I don't know, a regiment. Okay, you would stretch them out to monitor, the pocket and hold it. And part of the reason I've thought about double firepower is the idea that, you'd obviously, to compensate for the amount of men, you would probably leave some, medium machine guns, heavy machine guns, even some extra mortars and stuff to basically, when the Russians come, to basically try to use all that firepower to slaughter them. So, so I'm toying with that, because that has been the subject of discussion and debate, and I see both sides of this. I see where this, dropping these guys off would be more realistic, or having to keep, a block physically here is more realistic, but we are talking about month turns, so So I would say that's probably the one ugly part of this, is just kind of, it does feel a little off, for lack of a better way to put it. I don't know how else to articulate it other than, wonky, I guess, is the best word I can think of. It does feel a little wonky. So I would say that the creating the pockets is probably the ugly part of these games and this game system. But overall, I enjoy them. I have a lot of fun with them. I've been very much into Army Group South, as I've told you guys recently. So, Kiev 41, this is terrific, coming at the right time for me. Moscow 41, I just had that on the table before I put Kiev back on. That was that was a lot of fun. It's very challenging too, trying to figure out how to deploy those doggone Panzer Corps, because the geography, there's that little stretch there with all those yellow spaces and that wooded stuff, and it's like, dude, I want to get out here to the green area, but there's no green path, so to speak, to Moscow and all, and it's just it's just like that. But I do like how the system does reward you for isolating the enemy and destroying enemy units, because that was the stated goal for the Germans, was to destroy as many of the units as they can at the border. Destroy the Red Army. Well, that didn't always work out the best. That was part of the pocketing thing too, as well. So overall, I will say that these games get more play than some of my other East Front games that I have, just because I enjoy them. They're fun to play, but they're also interesting and challenging at the same time. And I guess, that's the best compliment you can give a game, is that you find it fun, you find it challenging, but it's also very playable at the same time. So overall, I would give this a high rating, obviously, clearly, because I have, 7 good things, just a couple of bad, and only one ugly. So, there's not a whole lot here that I don't like. So, anyway. So, that's kind of my review of Kiev 41. Alright. Now, that being said, so far, for those of you who watched the combat video, the Kiev Part 2, so far I've got 1 vote for Storms of Steel for the next playthrough. And again, I've been toying around also with A Victory Denied, and also with Triumph and Tragedy, showing my solo method that I use to make each game kind of at the start a little different. So I have fun with it, I'll say that much. It makes every game interesting, and perhaps more importantly, I've noticed that even when I actively play one of the 3 factions in Triumph and Tragedy, the other 2, it's still competitive. And actually a couple of times, actually more than a couple of times, it's been more like 50-50 winning wise. I don't always win using the solo method. So, anyway, so those are kind of the 3 things that I'm looking at, because I don't think there's any other Kickstarter or P500 GMT stuff. Well, that's not true. I take that back. Compass Games is supposed to publish Ostkrieg, which is a system based on the Pacific Tide system, which I have videos on from earlier this year. That's coming out in December, so at some point I hopefully will get that to the table before the end of the year, and take a look at that, because I like Pacific Tide, as you guys know. I have an overall favorable opinion of it. Hopefully the rule book is better this time, and I just can't resist East Front games. It's just hard for me to do. Especially Barbarossa games, or games that depict the whole war, especially ones that have scenarios for the beginning, so beginning, by beginning I mean 41, 42 kind of thing. Alright, okay, so don't want to ramble here too much, but in a nutshell, if you like East Front games, I think you should look into this. If you enjoyed the other 2 games, I think you will enjoy this one too. And like I said, the Gore-Tex map wasn't cheap. So I guess that kind of is a testament to how much I like the game, because I bought the bigger map to make it, more enjoyable to play on, especially from a solo perspective, because then the spaces aren't so crowded, as you saw from the first video. So, okay, so that's my opinion here for Kiev 41. And like I said, right now, got 1 vote for Storms of Steel, which is going to be hitting the table just as soon as I get done with this. I'm almost done with the rule book. So So I'm looking forward to trying that because ever since I was a little kid, I've just always liked tanks. I just, you know, tank warfare has always fascinated me. So yeah. So Storms of Steel, which is Kursk, 1943. That should be right up my alley and right up my wheelhouse. Or right in my wheelhouse, I should say. So, all right. So this is Tim Korchner from Bare Bones Wargaming, saying thanks for watching, and I will see you again next time.